Hi, I'm Tom Robinson with the Institute for International Business and Center for International Business Education and Research at CU Denver. At the IIB Cyber, we support faculty in enhancing the global dimensions of their teaching and research, provide students opportunities to be best prepared for work in the global economy, and collaborate with the business community to advance international business practice. Through the IIB and Cyber, we are happy to introduce this Career Spotlight series. This series is intended to be a resource for students to learn more about various careers in international business. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Greg Whitlock. Greg is an international logistics manager, driving success in international supply chains through superior customer service, logistics expertise, business acumen, attention to detail, and creative thinking. Greg is a 2011 graduate of the Masters in International Business program at CU Denver, and Greg currently works as an international logistics manager for Aero Electronics. Greg, thanks so much for sharing with us today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Awesome. So as I mentioned, the purpose of this is to really give students an understanding of your career path and kind of how you've used your international business education throughout your to further your career. So I want to just start out kind of how did you get started, and would you study in undergrad, and what were those first few decisions you made to move you along your path?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of an interesting story, I suppose. I think I got really interested in all things international after a senior trip to Spain. After high school, where I was really excited and blown away really at the just being immersed in the culture a little bit, the food, all the history and places that we got to go. And I think I came home from that with a real sense of wanting to be involved in more international things as I went through my education and ultimately career. During college, undergrad, I studied Spanish and political science, so liberal arts stuff. But my junior year, I studied abroad in Spain for second semester, junior year, and so living with a family and going to school and really having to find my way in that culture, both with the language and just getting around, communicating with the family I lived with, making Spanish friends, and certainly going to school and the education piece around that, really forced me, I think, to think differently in terms of, not only how I speak and, what it is I'm communicating, but also, being cognizant of how that culture ultimately operates, because it is so different from the US. So that gave me a really nice insight to different cultures. And then, once the semester was over, I took about a month, a little more maybe, and just traveled around Europe and, took trains and hovercrafts and planes and rented cars and, really just saw, the vast majority of Europe anyway, in that time frame. And so you come across all these different people who, a lot of them are doing the same thing, but they're from different countries too. And then, who you interact with in each country. And I'll never forget when I came, my kind of month-long trip around Europe, when I finally got back to Spain, it felt like home. It was, I got back from France back into Barcelona. And I was living in Madrid at the time, and it felt like home to me, and so there was kind of a safety there and sort of a familiarity, I'll say. And so, ultimately during the rest of that summer, I tried to work, and, I would have been a waiter or a bartender, or, I would have done anything.
Yeah.
But I couldn't get any work. And so I ran out of money and had to come home. And so I finished up my senior year at Colorado State. And then directly after that, I had an internship with the World Trade Center downtown. So I was working for the Colorado International Business office. And so I had an internship there. And then right after that, I had an internship with the US State Department. And so I went to Athens, Greece, and I worked at the embassy in Athens, and, you know, tried to learn Greek. But I worked in the consular section, helping to process visas to the US. And I had a big project there where I was kind of tracking the returns of people who would travel to the US and either not go back to Greece or hopefully they did, you know, before their visas expired. So yeah, I did that for 4 or 5 months, I think, with the State Department. And then I came home and I didn't really know what to do career-wise. And then I found an opportunity with a steamship line, APL. So it's a containerized shipping. And so I was a customer service rep for a number of years. And I learned a lot in that kind of, it was fairly entry level, I'll say, but, you know, just learned a lot about the logistics process during that piece of my career. So, you know, the bills of lading, the customs, the, you know, transit times, how containerized shipping works. And then ultimately I did some project cargoes, you know, out of gauge shipments that don't fit in containers. You know, a lot of that is, you know, oil well supplies or, you know, big industrial type machinery. But a lot of that too is military. So that, you know, was kind of during the drop and drawdown in Iraq and Afghanistan in those days. And so we had a lot of military cargo going into those locations that we would help facilitate too. So that was kind of the end of my tenure at APL. And I was looking for kind of a change at the time. And I used to drive by Aero Electronics every day on my way to work. And I just looked at their site one day and they had an opening for an international logistics analyst. And so I got an interview here and yeah, here I am. And so what's cool about that is that, you know, it's a total departure from kind of my transportation background. And so from 2013 till now, I've really been able to build the international logistics program, put a lot of processes in place, you know, develop customer relationships, and really think outside the box and get creative in a lot of ways about how we conduct international business. Because you look at the supply chain differently. So when you're you know, working for a carrier, you're really just moving things A to B for whoever hires you, you know, and so you're doing those pieces. But on the other side of the table is the shipper, and so that's where Aero comes in. And so you're the one kind of hiring these carriers and dictating how, you know, we look at the full transaction start to finish. We look at you know, where in the world we need to put product, where our customers are, and we look at all the transportation, all the taxes. Taxes, I mean indirect, so VAT type stuff. And then we're, you know, executing. And so we're, you know, managing the transaction start to finish, and then all the way through customs on the other side in a lot of cases, and then delivery the final mile to the end customer. So I've learned a lot in this role as it relates, you know, yes, I have the transportation background and that's helped me a lot along the way. But the exposure here for how actual transactions happen, I think has probably been the most beneficial and really gotten me to where I'm at today, you know, managing a team and overseeing an entire program really, that in a lot of cases, you know, we would lose deals if we couldn't handle international transactions. And Aero's a big global outfit, but it's a lot more complicated than simply having locations around the world and you know, just saying that's it, you know, walking away. So there's a whole lot of intricacies that go into that. And so, yeah, I'm pretty proud of, you know, where I've gotten and you know, the opportunities I've had. I think I've taken the taken advantage of those and made the most of them at Arrow here. So yeah,
Nice.
that's the story.
Yeah, dude, that's a great. It's super interesting, and I think you told it really well to give kind of an idea of how one step led to the next and just kind of getting to where you are now. I think for students, just as far as your work with Arrow, you were talking about how, because when you worked, was it APL, right?
Hmm.
When you
Yeah.
worked with APL, it was more related to just the shipping component. Um, so with the transactions at Arrow and the kind of supply chain, could you give a little background on, what Arrow does and then what that supply chain and logistics
Mhm.
work you do with them looks like?
Yeah. Well, Arrow's more of a technology company these days, but bread and butter, I think, is just distribution. And so understanding distribution, I think, is key because there's more stakeholders in a transaction than just one buyer and one seller. So in a total supply chain, you have an ultimate end user who is buying product. It could be a server or networking equipment or security devices, and so you have an end customer. Could be like a school district is a good example. They would buy servers or networking gear. Well, they buy that from a reseller or what we would know as a retailer. Um, and the retailer or reseller, they buy from a distributor like Arrow. And
Hmm.
it's Arrow who has the ultimate distribution contracts with manufacturers. So that's like, Dell or HP or IBM. And so Arrow is the one who's actually sourcing that product directly from those manufacturers in most cases. So
Uh-huh.
understanding the basic business model, and distribution as a whole, I think, was a learning experience for me. But the way it works internationally becomes a whole lot different than a domestic type transaction. So there's a lot more factors to consider.
And are you usually like, is the international side both on the procuring from the manufacturers and selling to customers, or is it more like international customers? What's the just,
So that's a really good question. So it's kind of both. So in a lot of cases, we have customers of ours who would be resellers or the retailers that are only based in the US. And so it changes how you build the transaction model and who's buying from whom along the way. If they have international presences, so if we have a customer who's based in the UK or, you know, just as an example, then they're free to transact with Arrow UK directly. And so it changes the scope of the transaction where it may not be based entirely in the US and it may be based someplace else. And we manage those transactions too to say, all right, your customers in France, they're buying from you in the UK, you can source it from us in the UK. And then Arrow UK ultimately buys from the manufacturers. So then in a lot of cases, it depends on where the manufacturer is actually manufacturing the product. So, in most cases, there's worldwide hubs. And so manufacturers will set up, usually in tax-friendly locations like the Netherlands or Singapore. And so it's advantageous for them to have manufacturing operations in those types of hubs that may be outside of the US and can serve certain geographies better.
uh-huh. So you were working with yeah, both sides of it then, it sounds like international companies or international buyers and the manufacturing is international as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's manufacturers who are based in Israel,
Hmm.
and the only way to source that product is to import it or ultimately export it from Israel and import it into someplace else. A lot of these companies are based in the US, but many aren't, and so it changes how you design not only the PO flow of who's buying from whom, but then how you place that product in certain countries.
Hmm. What for you is the most interesting? part of your current role as an international logistics manager? Yeah.
Well, I would say that the thing that keeps my interest level up every day is that every single day is different. And so none of these deals, none of these customers, um, none of the scenarios are the same. And so every single day it's something brand new, and something brand new you have to solve for, different customer requirements, different requests, different capabilities from a manufacturer contract standpoint, different tax implications for every single opportunity. And so I think what keeps me coming back every day is just that it is different, and there is no cookie cutter answer. And I do have to use my brain,
Yeah.
or I get to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's I would say that's the piece I like most. And most interesting piece of it is that there are very few monotonous days. It's something fresh every day.
Nice. That's good. Um, and with that, and maybe I don't know if it's a similar answer, but what do you think is one of the more challenging aspects of your job? Like what's part of it that you think is really tough for you, or yeah, that is challenging?
Well, it's challenging overall. I think knowing and understanding, you know, because really what we're doing is providing an awareness. We are telling the supply chain how things could and should work. Now, am I a tax advisor? No. But do I provide tax awareness? Absolutely. And so, we identify things like potential tax exposures that might not be able to, be tolerated in a compliant fashion. We work out all the transportation pieces, and we work out all the import processes with our agents around the world. And so a lot of cases that means we're sourcing paperwork from manufacturers. We're providing, we're creating import licenses to places like Hong Kong, or we're dealing with BIS certificates for India. And so a lot of that, the challenge, I guess, so those are challenges just by themselves. But
Yeah.
the challenge then, of course, then too, is getting the rest of the stakeholders in a transaction on the same page, and making sure everyone understands their roles and responsibilities throughout the process. And articulating that sometimes is a little challenging, or steering a transaction a certain way when, one request might be mutually exclusive of another request. So you might not be able to do them both together. You might get one or the other. But so I think solving for the customer requests and ultimately what they're requiring is one of the bigger challenges, and that's what my team and I look at all day.
Mhm. Cool. Okay. And then I was thinking back because I thought we should touch on at least a little bit of the MSIB, kind of how that played into your career. So I just wanted to see like what skills, from the MSIB, or what aspect of the MSIB has really added to your career. I mean, it could be just the name, like just getting a master's and having that on your resume, or are there specific skills you learned throughout that program that helped you along your career path?
Well, yeah, so that's a good question too. I always liked the MS aspect of it. I thought that was cool. That I'm a master of science.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my draw. I think I just thought it was unique that way. But look, I come from a liberal arts background, and so ultimately, when I got into the business world, I realized I didn't have the business acumen necessary to really further my career. So I didn't have things like finance or accounting or statistics, under my belt in undergrad. And so the MSIB, and I realize those are core curriculum classes, as part of the program. But a lot of those were really eye opening to me. But I'll also say things like, international tax, negotiations. I'm in a lot of contract negotiations where we call out, roles and responsibilities, what the seller and the buyer are each going to do. A lot of it comes down to Incoterms. Um, Knowing those and learning about those in the program helped me tremendously. So really, things like that, really, I think, and cross-cultural type stuff, just understanding, how different cultures, operate. I'll never forget, I think it was Dr. Cho, talking about just taking how you're going to take some business cards. You
Yeah.
take someone's business card and put it in your back pocket, if you're in Asia, for example, because it's rude. And so you take it with both hands and, look at it, and you treat it with respect. And so things like that, it's just little pieces, but overall, I think, as far as my day-to-day role here, I will say taxation type stuff, certainly Incoterms, and then negotiations around contracts, and kind of trying to build something into a contract that's most advantageous, not only to yourself, but you want to be equitable, I think, to the rest of the stakeholders. And so, finding something that works for everybody. But yeah, the program really helped me immensely. I'm kind of a successful byproduct of it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you've done well. And I think that's like, I can, that's why I've done the MBA, same thing. Cause I also
Yeah.
have the, kind of, yeah, liberal arts background. So it's so important to understand our world, because it's like all that, any job,
Mhm.
if you understand finance, accounting, those basics, it's super important. Did you, for
Well, not that I
negotiations?
understand those. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I know it's such a spectrum of like what you know. You get in one group and
Yeah.
you're like, wow, I feel like very confident. And then you get in another, you're like, I know nothing.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm far from you know an expert in finance or econ or statistics, but I got through it.
Nice. Did you have was Kelly C your negotiations professor? Do you remember? I don't know if she was still there when you were there.
It would have been Missy.
Missy. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice. Yeah,
yeah.
she's right.
So learned a lot in that too. And that was a tough course for me because you got to get out of your comfort zone a lot, and I didn't have a lot of I'll say business experience behind me at that time. And so, I definitely felt like a fish out of water in that course, but it definitely helped me a lot.
Nice. And then I think before we go, I just because this is to help students understand what kind of your story, and then also how they can better kind of structure their preparation to move towards their goals. So if you were looking to hire someone for your team, Aero Electronics for international logistics, what kind of knowledge, skills, abilities, personality traits, values, those kinds of things are you looking for with someone that you would hire?
Yeah. So I would say you today you really need somebody who's pretty outgoing and comfortable in their own skin, and willing to be in front of people. We're on a lot of conference calls and meetings before COVID and things like that, but certainly still doing this type of thing. um, and really a lot of it comes down to, and you can have a lot of different skill sets, but a lot of it will come down to simple customer service. I think you want someone who has attention to detail, who is willing to go the extra mile for a customer, build the relationships, and really be the face of the organization, and have that, I'll call it kind of a sense of urgency in a lot of ways, where if it's urgent to your customer, it becomes urgent to you. Outside of kind of those inherent personality traits, we can call them, I suppose. Any background in operations, any transportation type experience, any logistics, background or education you can have, I think goes a long way. Even just an MBA, just having the financial background and being able to be a little analytic, which is where I lack sometimes. I'm not really a numbers guy in a lot of ways, and so I would actually look for somebody to kind of bolster some of that when it comes to reporting practices. We have a lot of reporting tools that we use to determine volumes in certain areas, and obviously profits and losses, and make sure that we're in the black all the time on all our transactions and how we're operating. And so those types of backgrounds would be super helpful. And then short of I guess beyond that, yeah, you would just want somebody who's kind of focused on really what it takes to be in the international realm. So I would also look at somebody who's traveled a little bit or speaks different languages and those type of aspects too, because all those things are strengths and assets that tell me that they've encountered other cultures. They understand at the very minimum that kind of what the differences are, and how you've, I don't know, I guess put yourself in those situations and interacted with those individuals and really tried to understand the other perspectives, I'll say. So I think there's a lot of ways you can go about it. Liberal arts isn't, it's not a showstopper, it's definitely how I got my start. But I think certainly in the MSIB program, you learn a lot about, the things I just mentioned, and a lot more, obviously. There's HR courses around it and things like that. And so even if you're looking into, not even the business side of business, the people side, you're still coming into contact, and an MSIB degree, I think, would help you in those regards too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really helpful. So last thing, just any sage advice, any like career, just something you would say for someone kind of starting their career path. I always think I always think patience, but that's I don't know, or just like and hard work. But anything that you would say just as advice for someone getting started, and yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, just in my own experience, I there were things I tried to force that ultimately probably weren't good fits. For one reason or another, it was me or the organization I was looking at or whatever. And I think it's important to be open to different options and different paths. The I don't know. You want to weigh your opportunities, I think, and along your lines for patience. But I think also trying to be as smart about it as possible and realizing that, did I see myself working at Arrow a decade ago? No, or doing the type of work that I do. I mean, when I look back, I think I was telling you, Tom, I wanted to be a foreign service officer.
Yeah.
I wanted to work in the foreign service, work at embassies and live abroad and all those types of things. And, when that didn't work out, kind of regrouping, and that was before I had a master's, and, it really worked on myself a lot. And so I think, I think as long as you put in the work and you're interested in what you're doing, the opportunities will come. And it's just a matter of kind of when and where. And if you got your eyes open to it, then I think you'll ultimately sort of find what you're looking for. It's hard to say you're going to get, exactly, the career path or anything like that. But I think, just being open to those different opportunities and, you learn a lot of different things doing that. I know a lot more about distribution and Arrow's business as a whole in addition to what I do every day on the international side. So there's a lot of learning opportunities that come with things that aren't necessarily the correct fit for you, so to speak. So I guess I would just say that around, being open, do your work, make a name for yourself. I think it's important to, get your name out there and really dive into things when you're assigned tasks, and even if you're an entry level position, really do that work and really, kind of prove yourself. And then I think, the results from that are, the career success that you're ultimately looking for. I would caution anybody about, kind of the instant gratification, or super high expectations, after graduation, or, whatever the case is. It simply takes a long time. I mean, the MSIB program is not going to teach you about, you know, aero electronics business as a whole. It's not going to teach you, how certain organizations function and their inner workings, but it does give you that framework to go into that organization and contribute. And so there's a lot of learning that goes along with that part too.
Hmm. All right. Thank you so much, Greg. This is really helpful. Appreciate your experience and sharing with us.
Yeah, very welcome. Thanks for having me.